Welcome back to this week's Inside the Idaho Vandals. I'm Dennis Patchen. We got a big football game this weekend. Now, it's not a conference game. It's not a game played every year. But when two schools are just 8 miles apart, everybody wants to win that rivalry. It's bragging rights. It's over your neighbor. Heck, sometimes it's over family members. Lauren Sanders has a look at this rivalry that has been dating back more than 100 years.
I'm thinking WSU, Idaho, we got a good chance this year. We've got a new coach. You know, WSU, it's great to have that Palouse rivalry. And I think the Vandals are going to kick some butt next week is what I think. We're going to kill them, guaranteed.
It has been 6 years since the rivalry has been played. Washington State has won the last 7 games and holds the advantage with 70 wins over Idaho's 17. The two teams will meet at Martin Stadium for Washington State's homecoming this Saturday.
Better than to be in Martin Stadium and the only noisy place is the end zone where the Vandals sit, and the rest of the stadium was like.
Some faithful Vandals are hoping for a victory like the one back in 1954. Intern President Don Burnett called it the game of the century.
Vandal team that year started out really struggling. Lost their first game to Oregon 41-0, lost the next 3 games. The coach could see that the players were improving, but the scores weren't exactly showing it. And so then the next game occurred in Pullman. And at the end of the first half, the score was 0-0. And all throughout the stadium, the buzz was, what are we going to do about these pesky Vandals?
One of the fondest memories for the alumni was the loser walk.
We played them every year, and then whoever lost had to walk to the other city. So if WSU lost, they had to walk to Moscow. Or if we lost, we had to walk to WSU.
The student body had to walk.
Yeah, and it was a real tradition. I mean, tons of people would do it.
The rivalry between the schools is more than just a game. It brings Moscow and Pullman together as one great community.
And I do think it's important to play that game periodically, because when you have institutions that are only 8 miles apart, it makes a lot of sense. It creates a lot of excitement for the communities. It's great for the Palouse. So it's something that I think we ought to do periodically. I don't know if it's the right thing to do every single year.
Even though the teams won't play yearly, fans can look forward to the next scheduled game in 2016.
I-D-A-H-O!
It's a lot of history when two schools have been playing each other off and on for 100 years or more, and they're just 8 miles apart. But what about this year's game? What does Washington State do? What are you looking at the Cougars as you look at this game and try and break this thing down?
You know, when you think of the Cougars, initially your first thing is Coach Leach. You know, he's been an unbelievable offensive coach. What he did at Texas Tech, put up all kinds of points, won 10 games almost every single season he was there. So that's kind of your first impression is, you know, man, they're going to be great on offense, and they are. They do a great job. His air raid offense is explosive. But when you really look at them, they're playing real good defense right now. You know, they beat USC because of their defense. They shut them down all day long. Their defensive front is real physical and plays hard, and they scored their 1 touchdown in that game defensively. So, you know, they're a good football team. He's done a real good job. He was probably kind of going through last year what I'm going through right now, and he's done a good job there. He's a good football coach. But the biggest thing that shows up really when you watch tape on them right now to me is their defensive line. They're real good up front defensive line.
What are they doing, Paul? What makes them so good? Why have they improved so much maybe from a year ago, do you think?
You know, they've just probably bought into what they're teaching. You know, I know it was a big change for them too, how they were doing things to how they're doing them now, and they probably bought into how hard they're working, and they're getting better every day at practice, and schematically nothing's really changed. You know, they're just playing better. They're doing what they're coached to do.
Now, not that this is going to matter this weekend, but do you look 8 miles away and say, well, they took a giant, they've taken so far a giant step from where they were in their first year as something that you can point to for this program?
Yeah, no question. You know, and I heard their athletic director, you know, Bill Moose, say he really thought it was going to take 3 years for them to make the change, and the season's still early, and so they're a little ahead of schedule, and I believe we're going to make big strides. I think we already have. You know, from game 1 to game 3, we've made big strides, and we just got to continue to get better all this season, and I expect us to fully go in and compete to win the Sun Belt next year.
Now, I know when you're game planning, you look at other teams' defenses, and that's what you worry about. But as an offensive guy, when you look at what Mike Leach is trying to do, does that cause a defense problems? Does that put pressure on a defense, especially one-on-one in the open field?
Yeah, no question. And to be honest with you, I always like to watch what the team's offense does too. 'Cause a lot of times the plays that they run best work every day in practice against their defense. So every week when we're game planning, I always, definitely we spend all day watching the defense, but I always pull out their top plays, run and pass, because they go against each other all spring and all pre-fall. So I'm always curious of what their best play is, and a lot of times put it in, because usually it's good against their own defense. Friday is like a home game. Saturday is like a home game. We're just not playing in our stadium. We're playing in their stadium, but we'll have all kinds of Vandal fans there rooting for us, I'm sure, and our guys will be excited and fired up. And so, but the travel and all that, basically, it's a home game. You just playing in their stadium.
What would a win right now do for your football team after 3 weeks of the season and the camp and all the stuff in the summer and the spring football? What would that mean?
Oh, it'd be great. I thought we were going to get it last week, but we're just going to, like I've said over and over and over, it's a process. We're going to work hard every single day. We're going to keep improving. And the game's a process, really. You just got to take it one play at a time, play the best you can, and just keep fighting. And when that happens, then it'll be great. But then come Sunday, nothing's going to change. We're going to go right back to work, and every week's going to be the same process.
You talk about getting better in practice and doing things better, and so you're not thinking, you're just doing. When it comes to getting a team better and where you need it to be, is practice where guys make their most improvement, or can they get better just by playing in games?
No, you got to get better in practice to know what you're doing in the games, and then there's no doubt you got to keep improving in practice, but then games, that's showtime. So sometimes you got to have the guys that improve all the time in practice, but then when it counts in the game, they got to make it, make the play too. But no, you got to have practice, and we're still waiting to have that week where we put back to back great practices in a row. Right now we've kind of been good on Sundays, good on Tuesdays. We've had a hard time putting Wednesday a good practice back to back after Tuesday, because those are two hard physical practices in a row. So this week needs to be the week. Let's have two good practices in a row, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Any pressure in the community? Because when two towns are 8 miles apart, they want to win that football game for a little bit of bragging rights, because these two communities are intertwined. You getting any of that?
Oh, I think there's pressure all the time. That's part of the deal. But I don't think anyone will ever put more pressure on me than I put on myself. So I've wanted everything I've done my whole life, and we're going to be great here, and it's going to happen.
You haven't got the mayor calling you up saying you gotta cover my bet,
He
right?
might be. I'm probably been busy.
All right, the Cougars and the Vandals this week. It's a late night start. It's a 7:30 game. 7:30 start. That's kind of tough, isn't it?
Nah, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
You start.
Okay, it's where you finish, right? Not where you start.
That's right.
Thanks for coming on the show. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, thanks.
Head coach Paul Petrino with us every week. When we come back, a pretty good weekend for the Idaho Vandal women on the volleyball court, and Heartbreak City for the soccer team. We'll have all of that for you, and we continue with another edition of Inside the Idaho Vandals.